Lilit through a mutual acquaintance, I guess, who is active in the medical informatics at NIH. And I thought that her topic is very relevant to what we are trying to do, the system that the platform that she is developing. So Dr. Litit Yeghiazarian from University of Cincinnati here.
Thank you, Maria. I think this is quite a serendipitous meeting because I met with some of Maria's colleagues at NSF. I think this was in October, maybe, or January. And that was when NSF still didn't have a place. They were homeless, so we were just renting renting a space somewhere else for the PI meeting. And I was told that this was the only in-person event that NSF managed to do in a long time. So it was a lot of fun. I'll tell you a little bit about the projects that kind of got me here. Before that, my background is I'm a mutt, really. I started out chasing a place where I could study math, physics, and biology in the same place, didn't find it. Started with electrical engineering. Once you're an electrical engineer, the world starts looking like a network to you. And then I ended up doing my PhD in environmental bio and environmental engineering. Finally, bio and engineering in one word, where it was about contaminant transport in rivers. So I figured out that electrical engineering works just as well in hydrology because everything is a network and things are moving around. And then I got to a point of how do we describe these complex systems? And I realized that the data are silent. So this is this is the convoluted path to to meet you. And I'm delighted that I'm here in this room. And thank you again, Maria, for making this connection. So, open knowledge networks help address flooding and water energy challenges. The origin of these two projects was with the National Science Foundation Convergence Accelerator program. And their goal was to take low-hanging fruit technologies and rapidly bring them to practice, transition them to practice. And when it comes to flooding, that is quite a significant problem that we're all experiencing around the world. And the losses from flooding are increasing, especially in urban areas where things are concentrated, people and infrastructure, but we still cannot predict how truly flooding impacts cities. So I want you to take a look at this sequence of pictures. So this is what happens when you have a powerful storm hitting a city. You have strong winds taking down the power lines, so the power is out. That disables the sewerage system, so the pumps do not pump anymore, so all the sewage starts backing into the buildings and also rivers, streams, and lakes. People are displaced, bridges are out, drinking water also not available because of loss of power, and then water gets into the highways and disrupts transportation. So what we're seeing here in this sequence of photos is really failures that are cascading through the fabric of a modern city. And this is, with my background in networks of different kinds, is how I think of cities. I think of them as a multiplex or a network of networks. So we have the surface water, we have the dams and navigation infrastructure sitting on that. We have the transportation grid, we have the power grid, we have the civic infrastructure, drinking water pipes, stormwater and wastewater infrastructure, and the groundwater. So each one of these networks or sectors are connected to another one, either physically or functionally or both. So these are highly connected systems. The crux of the issue is that the data are not. So there have been data accumulated for decades in each one of these areas. But if in totality the data are not connected, then there is no way we can understand how external stressors will propagate through a highly connected system. So this being the crux of the issue of understanding the true impact of floods on cities, we set out to build a knowledge graph. And I think this community is very well familiar with that concept. So we think of a knowledge graph with nodes representing particular entities. In this case, it could be, for example, buildings or power stations and wastewater treatment plants, and the links or the edges between them are the physical or functional relationships. So as you start building out this digital representation of the world in a networked data system, then you can use it for real-time response to external pressures. In this case, it is flooding, long-term planning, and what we set out to do in the beginning, assessing the total impact of floods on cities. On the left, you see kind of the static portion of the architecture. That this is the graph where we encode information about infrastructures. We have buildings and roads from 3 different sources. We have Superfund's underground fuel storage tanks and non-point pollution regulations, which are text documents from EPA. We have energy resources and the power grid from DOE and the National Inventory of Dams from the Army Corps of Engineers. We intersect all of that with hydrology because that's our dynamic part, and we get forecasts from NOAA and USGS. We generate our own forecast based on these readings. And finally, we connect to other resources that are available, knowledge graphs and different types of resources that are not necessarily knowledge graphs. And here on the top right, top left, you see a snapshot of North Carolina. You guys were talking about it. This is New Hanover County. Each dot is a piece of infrastructure. It could be a building or a power station or an underground fuel storage tank. Colors represent sources. So in this case, we have pulled together 7 different sources of data to build a coherent picture of infrastructure in New Hanover. Bottom right shows the heat map of all of those assets across the continental US, over 150 million that are encoded in the knowledge graph. And I'm going to show you a quick live demo of the flood forecasting system. And it's loading. So here it is. We have live forecasts that are updated every hour for 16 hours ahead. At the bottom left here, we show the top 15 alerts. The highest alert with almost 34,000 structures at risk of flooding are in Kentucky currently. We can go there. We can look at this county. We can drill down to the block group level. And here, if we click on it, it's going to show. Oh, I think I ran away from that spot. Let me see. So these are in the Louisville area, major flooding. The risk of flooding is high according to USGS descriptions. This is the total number of structures. This is time 0. This is time plus 16 hours. And this is the characterization of different types of infrastructures that are at risk. Now going back, and as I said, you can drill down here to block groups or counties. And now we, based on this information, we went back to the question of cascading failures. And we said, well, given the connections that we have, let's just throw a blue blob on the city of Cincinnati. And this is a simulation. This is the bend of the Ohio River. And take a look at what kind of failures do we expect from a flood in Cincinnati. So if you look at this square, the rectangle, we have one electrical asset that is wet. Now, this asset is serving a water asset that is dry. The water asset is serving hospitals that are dry. So in traditional flood damage assessment, the only thing that goes into the calculation is the physical damage to infrastructure. It does not capture losses of functionalities and services. So if we can capture those, only then we can approximate or estimate the true impact of a flood on the city. In this particular event, there is not just one cascade, there is 43. The way I'm not showing all the cascades here because it's just would be too crowded. But the way we look at them is by service areas. So the blue polygons are water service areas, yellow ones are electric, and red ones are medical. And then for each asset, each building, each piece of infrastructure, we have our unique ID. We know what kind of a function it performs, and we know what kind of services it is likely to lose in this particular scenario. We can also do summary statistics. So in this case, I know that there are 43 cascades because 43 utilities are root causes of service failures. These are the wet assets. But then 415 buildings lost at least one service, and 40 electrical assets were out, 3 water, and 39 medical assets. So you can do this kind of statistics based on the connections in the graph. And then we set out to do analysis of disruptions in a regional economy. The model here looks at very high detail of the types of activities that are part of a regional economy. We look at ag, mining, utilities, construction, manufacturing, wholesale trade, professional services, education, arts and recreation. You see the level of detail here. And that captures what kind of losses would a region encounter if, let's say, I cannot take my kids to school because the school is closed or the roads are impassable. And so when you do this kind of disruption analysis on the regional scale, you can calculate that, for example, in Hamilton County, a 100-year flood would result in a gross regional product of 3.5 billion, employment decline of 55,000, and income loss of 1.4 billion. And this here is the New Hanover County in North Carolina with a similar analysis. So this is the state of the urban flooding open knowledge network. And then we extended this concept to enable queries at the nexus of water and energy. And once we built this capability, many of our partners across the federal government, some municipalities, started giving us questions that took us beyond the realm of water and energy. So I'm going to demo some of them that are relevant to this particular group. What we have here is a very simple interface. It's a natural language interface. When OKN stands for Water Energy Nexus Open Knowledge Network, and this is where you ask questions. Now, before I ask a question here, I want to show you the type of queries that were generated as part of the research and also as part of requests from our partners. So we have capability to describe anything that has to do with states, counties, and rivers, dams, coal mines, and power plants, hydrologic basins, watersheds, subwatersheds, stream gauges, demographics, economics, health, and education. This comes through Google Data Commons that in turn is linked to the census. Census tracts blocks and assets at risk of flooding, so we connect to the previous architecture to generate risk of flooding. I'm going to demo some of this PFAS contamination observation sites. We have information from Maine. We can do aggregations, so some statistical analysis is also possible on the fly. And then we have some tests that were provided by USGS. My favorite here is, let me see, this one actually. What percentage of Rocky Mountain National Park is too steep for elk movement? So you see that this is way beyond water and energy nexus because the system itself is sector agnostic and model agnostic. So we can run that one at some point, but I want to go back to PFAS. Okay. So I want to find all FRS is Federal Registry. Water supply and irrigation facilities in Maine within 800 meters of PFAS contamination observation. So I'm just copying this question and I'm going to paste it here. And you can actually write anything you want here and see if we can provide an answer. So this is running in real life. It has 3 attempts. So I don't know what's going on here. Let's try again. Okay. So this is the danger of live demos.
I respect that you're still doing it.
I am, yeah. I don't think it's going to happen because usually it is three attempts. But I can tell you what happens here. So this is an agentic system. And let's say I'm an agent and an agent is a project manager. I'm getting a request from a user. And the request could be complex. So for example, this particular question requires me to know what is Maine, where is it located? What does it mean to be 800 meters away from something? I need to know what are the time series of PFAS contamination, where have they been collected, in what medium, and I need to identify these water supply and irrigation facilities and do that geospatial calculation. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think this is gonna work today, unfortunately. Yeah. So I will share the links though, and you can play with it. And the idea here is that once you identify those things, and you also know the hydrology, you're familiar as an agent with the upstream and downstream concepts, then you can say, well, what is downstream of these contaminated areas? Or what are the communities that are drawing water from near these contamination observations? So you can actually start thinking of environmental exposures from these particular sites. And then by connecting to other knowledge infrastructures that encode, for example, all the way from exposure to changes in the genomes, and you guys know this much better than I do, and manifestation as a disease 5 or 10 years from down the road, those connections now can be made. All right, so I think I'm going to stop and then please ask me questions. Maria, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and it's probably a very naive question, but the query that you put in the chatbot was in meters. Many US-based documents or registers are in not in the metric system. So does it also convert by?
It should, yes. I don't remember having any issues with the metric or other systems. I would have tried on the spot, but you see, this is giving me a bit of trouble.
Yeah, I tried too. So it's not a matter of your connection to the system.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Probably an outage, just a
yeah.
local connection outage.
Yeah, most likely. I'll let our developers know and they can take a look at it.
Actually, sort of you're using an agent to retrieve and do like these interactions. Is there some way, like another agent, to represent there's an outage, so some dependency systems are not working?
So you mean the fact that this one is not working? No, I don't
Yeah.
think so.
No? Okay. Because that's the irony, but is if there is a storm and there is a disruption, right? It's upstream of your software, upstream of what you might need, but if it pings it, nothing comes back. And
Yeah.
right. So that's a real-time example of what happens when the power lines go out or the telecommunications out.
Yeah, I think this might be a telecommunication issue, and that is something that we have not gotten to yet.
Okay.
And I know that this is important, especially when you have massive disruptions like this, that how do you communicate?
There was there's something from I think it's American ASTE. I forget what that stands for, but it's a lot of the public health sector that look at is the hospital at capacity or depleted in their capabilities and capacity. But there is a separate network in order to understand that. And I think that it's basically not agent based. It's telecommunication between each other to make sure, like, are you okay? Or do you have do you have power? Can you take patients? Yeah.
Yeah. So this one knows the capacity of hospitals. It knows which one has how many beds. So you can make a differentiation between an urgent care clinic and a massive hospital. But at this point, we don't have, as I said, the communication part, the communication system is not explicitly part of it.
Right.
And
So
what we
you might have the denominator for the beds or bed capacity, right? But not necessarily the status.
Exactly. So if you want the status, then you need real-time updates to the system. And it's possible to do. It's not impossible, but we just need funding and the use cases, because if we do it and then nobody wants it, then there is no point in doing that. So the way we kind of start thinking about it, oh, you want it, Jimmy?
We've talked about it from regional public health emergency preparedness, like platform development.
Okay.
So at least I'm here in Seattle, Washington, and we've talked about it because our like 5 state area region, it's like it's I don't think it's CDC. Yeah, it is CDC. CDC and FEMA have separate regions, and the or I'm sorry, I think it's HHS. They have separate regions than the CDC regions. But where Washington is, like we basically we have to support each of our neighboring states. So as the trauma systems or these emergency, bed capacity systems go, knowing what the bed capacity is good, where its location is good, but also how to route. It's not usually like 1 or 2 patients. It's usually a whole community that might need to get out of the way of danger.
Yeah, I know. And that is a very interesting system in the Seattle area, because you're serving 5 states and you're sitting on a fault, right?
Yes.
So I
Yep.
think a lot of emergency preparedness comes from that. What happens if you have a major earthquake? So that's you have a lot of capacity in one place. And that is interesting to think about as opposed to more distributed systems, right? So yeah, I mean, if there is interest, that is definitely something that we are looking into doing, is the dynamic updates for the state of the system, whatever that system is. So yeah, please let's follow up and let me know. Charles, you've been very patient. You had your hand up.
Thank you. This is wonderful. I'm kind of blown away, and I'm wondering, yeah, how ready? Well, is that the state that we can start using it? And let me give you a little background. So we've been working with a data set called HCUP, which is the Healthcare Cost and Utilization Project, which comes from AHRQ, to look at associations of wildfire smoke and health. Now, HCUP is essentially a database of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency room visits across the United States. So it's a fairly large data set and fairly comprehensive. And your PFAS example, I'm just sitting here going, can we just take a sample of patients and see, how many are close to PFAS contamination sites, or look at some flooding events and see how we could integrate that with our data. Um, so I'm just sitting here wondering, what can we do with it now that you have this really cool tool? And so, is it ready? Can we ping it with
Yes.
an API?
Yep. Well, you can't ping it with API just yet, but here is the link. I would love for you to give it a try, and I'll let Maria, and maybe she can communicate with the rest of the group. And I will drop my email address here as well. So please reach out directly.
Lilit, there is a link to a meeting document in the chat, and you can add everything you want in that document.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
For simplicity.
And just along that lines, what things are you thinking of working on next?
We're going to be working with USGS on their Intelligent National Map. So when you don't just look at one layer at a time, you can interrogate across multiple layers. And that question of elk movement was part of that. So I'll show you the questions that they sent to us. So let me share again. So they gave us multiple categories of questions, and we can answer almost all of their basic categories, but they have much more advanced stuff. So we're going to be working on that. So we can do all of this. So when the system is back up, you go to sample queries and you can look at all of these things, and that's all working. The next one is working with the Corps of Engineers, also looking at their indirect impacts of floods. So it's exactly what I was showing you, separating what is wet from damages in areas that are dry. That could be populations of homeless people, it could be shelters, it could be hospitals, it could be any intermittent scenarios. And just these are the two things on the burner. The next one, a bit more farther out, is looking at this technology as the digital backbone of any circular economy. Because, and again, if you want to establish connections, it is critical to show them explicitly in a graph, because you can then track those. And then when you're dealing with complex models and systems of systems, then you need that agentic enterprise basically to model and create the workflows, execute everything, make sure things work right. So it's going to be always a combination of multiple technologies here. Okay, I think there is a question, Jimmy. Are you going to ask the question in the chat? Okay.
Yeah, I left two questions. One had to do with that first website, the flooding. I think it's the prospective about prospective validation of those predictions. So what kind of information, is actually being displayed on that website? Like, did they do a prediction for today, and then anytime that you show up onto that website today, it's still going to be the prediction for 16 days out?
16 hours out.
16 hours out. Okay.
Yeah.
16
And
hours
that
out.
is kind of on a rolling basis. Every hour there is an update.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to do prospective validation if the predictions are accurate?
We do retrospective validation. So we
Okay.
have historical events, and then because there is no perfect one data set that's going to tell you exactly where the flood was and at what depth. So one of the most reliable ones is actually reinsurance claims. So that is something that we're validating against. And we know that we should overestimate because not everybody will file an insurance claim. Apparently, and we didn't know that before we started, is sometimes it's better to just take a buyout instead of filing an insurance claim. So a lot of these insurance claims are actually underrepresenting the reality. So we're trying to diversify our sources for validation.
Okay, that pivots to the next question very well.
Okay.
In that some of these predictions, if they are 100-year characteristics, 100-year flood exceedance probability, does that mean quite as much damage as it is just the water is reaching more places, or does the building get damaged?
I'm not sure I fully understand your question.
Okay, so let's say that in the event that there is some flood, and it means like the rivers basically overflow, and that flood out, the water reaches like buildings and areas around, might disrupt some systems, but is it just disruption or is it like destruction? Is there some characteristic difference between that?
So in the back end, we are estimating the depth of water.
Okay.
So the depth of water is connected to the height of the first floor and all of those things. We do not on the fly generate this economic analysis of the destruction. The economic analysis that I showed you is a model that you need to buy data from a company that has very detailed information about every county, and that is expensive. So unless there is a specific use case and somebody willing to pay for it, we're not going to do it on the fly. So we did those 2 counties just to show capability.
Okay.
But the answer to your question is we don't do it on the fly, but we can do it if there is a need for it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I had a question on the use cases you showed with USGS. I know that there's a component of the knowledge networks. Are there use cases at the intersection of what you're doing and the groups who are doing some of the biomedical knowledge networks?
So with the biomedical knowledge network, we have these 2 use cases. One is the one with PFAS that I was not able to demo. And critical to that is the understanding of hydrology. Again, the downstream, upstream concepts here are very important. The second one, we did a use case of the train derailment in Ohio. So that one was
Vinyl chloride?
manual. Yeah, it was a manual process. We did not have the agentic work developed at the time. But what we did is basically we looked at proximity to various communities. We looked at the species of contaminants found, and then we connected with Sergio Baranzini's group. I think it's called, was one of the Convergence Accelerator projects that got funded at the same time with us. I think they spun off a company, Mate Biosystems, maybe. I think this is also a knowledge graph, and the name of this knowledge graph is Spoke.
Yeah, Spoke. Yep. Yeah. Do you have anything written up on the East Palestine?
No, we don't.
We would be very, very interested, and if you had anything written up, or if we could maybe some further conversations on that.
I can get you a short report, but we haven't published anything.
Okay. Yeah, we have a lot of investments in that particular incident, and so we'd love to know what you guys have done and how it might relate.
Yeah, it was actually quite shocking as to to discover what the potential impacts might be. So I will dig it out and share.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. I do want to make sure that we have time for any of the other updates. So are there any final questions?
And thank you for positive comments in the comment box. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I will just say this is terrific. Awesome.
Thank you.
It's amazing stuff.
Yeah, and the main reason that I wanted really to present here was that in our past previous meeting, Ibrahim brought a question of having predictions for infrastructure, utility infrastructure vulnerability, and I thought that's just direct response to this question.
And I'm happy to connect with him, Maria.
Yeah, he was on the meeting earlier. I think he left. Ibrahim Aswami.
All right. Let me ask, Tim and Hina, you both are listed on the agenda with update activities. Do you have time to give updates, or do you want to hold off on those?
I have a clarifying question regarding that. So I did this search for studies that had used both geospatial data and genetic data, and just trying to find what kind of studies are there. But Anne had written that I was going to talk about the standards and the best practices to combine geospatial data and genetic data. I didn't look at that. So yeah, I just looked at studies that have used these data together.
Okay. I mean, I think the group would still be interested in what you've done. Is it something we should wait till next time? Is that okay? Because I think it would be nice if fans can join too. I think she'd be interested.
Yeah, of course, sure.
All right. Tim, you're on the agenda for an update on Mind Map.
I do have an update. The update is I do not have an update.
All right.
But I will next month be able to spend more time on that.
Okay. Fully understand. And then I'll switch over to some of the. Well, are there any other updates from anyone in the room? Okay, if not, I was going to give some updates on some of the CDE work, but I also think that we should probably hold that off till next time. Maybe, I think, Jennifer, you're on the call. We should talk about maybe doing an update since you've done some of that work. And then on the agenda was some general community updates. Anne's abstract was accepted to the Global Exposomics meeting, which will be in Barcelona in April. Maria is trying to get to be able to attend that meeting also.
Very hopeful.
Yeah, the Nexus folks and the GEC folks on this who coordinate the Exposome coordinating centers will be there. I think there'll be a lot of relevant conversations about geospatial intersection with health at that meeting. As I learn more, I'll let this group know, and I'm sure Anne will too. Let's see, the Odyssey Symposium in Europe is going to be featuring the HIV and climate change work. We've talked about AMIA. Our group here at NIEHS usually goes to AGU. So if we end up going to AGU this year, we'll try to put a poster up that incorporates what this group is doing. And then for those, I think some of the people here are also on the GA4H Exposome Working Group. This is the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health. They have an Exposome Working Group that's led by Amy Foreman at EBI in Europe. That group is doing related work. And just to let people here know, one of the things that they are doing is they are currently cataloging the different exposures measures that are being collected for different large cohort studies. So they're collecting what all of us, what UK Biobank, what some of the European studies, what N3C. So they're trying to build a catalog of what are the common, well, not common, what are the environmental exposures that are being collected in those studies, what data sources they're using to better understand the landscape of where we are currently with integrating geospatial and health data. And so that will be something that, as that gets fleshed out, will be very interesting and informative. And those are all the updates I have are on the list. So any last comments or input from the group? Well, if not, we can end 1 minute early. Lilit, thank you very much for coming today. It was a fascinating presentation.
And thank you very much for welcoming me. And Maria, thank you again very much for making this connection.
All right.